Just a bit of context. When my mother was 12, my Uncle Jerry became mute. The doctor said that he had a stroke and that he would never talk again. Until a month ago, I had never really thought about it too much. I rarely saw my uncle in my daily life. I only saw him if an event like a birthday party or a holiday were happening. So to me, it just seemed reasonable. I never bothered to ask any further questions about it, since I didn't really care for my uncle. Plus, people with disabilities are common, so why would I suspect anything unusual about my uncle? My grandmother died about 2 months ago, which was a shame, since it was 7 days before my 28th birthday. I was distraught, since she was so kind to me, so I decided to cancel my birthday party to go to her funeral. Her funeral happened 2 days before my birthday. After the funeral, I asked my grandpa if I could stay at his place for a bit, and of course he agreed. I needed some time to grieve, and it sure as hell wasn't gonna be in my cockroach-infested apartment. I stayed in the house, mostly talking with Grandpa. He made me stay in the guest room, which was fine. The bed was soft, and there wasn't any critters to bother me. During the day, we talked about his life, and most importantly, my grandmother's life. My grandma was an 89-year-old woman. She managed to survive stage 4 cancer when she was 49, which was deemed as a miracle. My grandparents and my mother were extremely religious because of this. My grandpa met her when he was 25, and she was 23, and they bought this house when they were married 10 years later. My grandpa's house was a 3-floor, 9-room mansion kind of place. I stayed in the house for a few weeks, just grieving and giving comfort to my grandpa, since my mother had work and no one had my uncle's phone number. My uncle didn't even know his mother died during the first week. Then, the second week came along, and something odd happened. It was a Monday. During the night, I heard crying. At first, I thought it was my grandpa, so I gave it much importance. I got out of my bed, and before I reached the door, I noticed that the crying wasn't coming from my grandpa's room. It was coming from mine, more specifically, from the vent. At first, I thought I was just having some idiotic dream. I'm prone to bizarre and nonsensical dreams from time to time, but I clearly noticed that I was awake. I could feel the soft wood under my feet, the harsh cloth from my hand-me-down shirt. Of course I was scared. I didn't know what to do. I thought my grandpa was stuck in the vent for some reason. But then I realized that the crying wasn't in my grandpa's voice. It was in another voice. The voice of a kid. It couldn't be the voice of a kid older than 7 or 8. But my half-asleep mind could only feel fear. I couldn't stay in that room. I had to get out. I went to the kitchen and served myself a glass of water. I fell asleep on the floor, and my grandpa woke me up the next morning. I tried to explain what I heard, and all I got was a saddened stare from him. 4 days passed, and my uncle finally realized that his mother had died. He came to Grandpa's house, tears falling from his eyes. When he knocked on the door, it was me who opened it for him, and he just pushed me out of the way and went to look for Grandpa. Grandpa was cooking lunch at the time. It was about 2:30 p.m., and when he found him, he gave him a hug that lasted for a good 5 minutes. My uncle didn't have any way to properly say how sorry he was that he missed his own mother's funeral. He stayed in the house for a weekend. He hardly interacted with me, but that was okay. He just needed some time. He left soon enough. We didn't even notice. It was the start of the 3rd week. Up to that point, I didn't hear the crying again. Not until Friday. This time, I was talking with my grandfather about what he was going to do next. If he was going to try to remarry, or if he was just going to live alone until he died. Before he could answer, something started to cry in the vent right above us. I knew this couldn't be some sort of audio hallucination because he reacted too. All he did was look at me in silence, and I looked at him back. It took a good 3 hours for the crying to stop, and my grandpa, as soon as it was over, he asked me, "Do you want to hear a story?" I just responded yes. I didn't have anything else to say. I was too freaked out by the crying to say any more. My grandpa gave me a saddened glare and started to tell me the story. You see, when your grandmother was suffering from cancer, she was desperate. She wasn't ready to die, especially when she had a 12-year-old daughter and a 7-year-old son. So we prayed. We prayed for her to get better, but she only got worse. After some time, she took the matter into her own hands, and if the one above wasn't going to help, the one below would. He looked at me, trying to see if I could understand what he meant, but before I could even react, the crying came back, this time only for 5 minutes. But the one below is a cruel dealer. He knows that a dying woman isn't any good at contracts, but this opportunity was a great one for him, so he told us to take in one of his workers, where he would live until we croaked. But it didn't end at that. He wanted us to give it a voice, a soul. I don't know what we were thinking, but at the time your mother was so infatuated with her little boyfriend that we just couldn't be so cruel as to take it away from her. So we allowed the creature to take it from the next best thing. I couldn't believe what he was saying. It was just abnormal. That's why we lived so long. That's why you're talking to me when you're 28. And that's why your uncle is so separated from the family, and why he is silenced. The crying came back. Whatever the hell it was, the demon, the thing inside the vents, the creature was just screeching. It was louder than before, way louder. It got my tinnitus to act up horribly. My grandpa rushed me out of the door, screaming that he was sorry. I got into my car and drove away. I drove away for hours, but to me it seemed like days. I woke up inside my car at some fast food parking lot. I went and got myself a burger to eat. I was starving. I then drove to my apartment. It had been so much to understand that I just didn't think about it. It hurt to think. It hurts my brain just typing, but that's not the worst part of it all. In that night, I had a dream. I had an odd, terrible dream. All I could see in it was blood, fire, burned soil, and dead trees. And I heard something. Something that I could so vividly remember that it makes me wonder if it was a dream. I heard the next words. "As long as you two live, it shall live with you. If anything were to happen, and one lasts longer than the other, the first person you tell shall take the curse from you, and as long as they survive, it will survive, and you will too. But they will carry the creature no matter how much they avoid it, and it will always be watching, always hungry." I heard that in my dream, but it wasn't with a voice. I heard those words without hearing them. I woke up that night. Something was crying in the vent. It has been a month after that. I can feel the presence of something in the walls. It hasn't let out any more crying so far, but I don't know what to do or what to think. Any advice? Thank you for listening to I Learned Why My Mute Uncle is Mute. Now I Hear Crying in the Vents Every Night by Mysterious Bed 9005. If you ended up enjoying this story, please leave a like. And if you enjoy hearing stories from me, please subscribe and become a resident of Hill Street and let me know how I'm doing in the comments. And I hope you all have a fantastic night.